Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. So my name's Katie and today I'm going to be doing part 2 of my April wrap up. I'm going to be talking about all the books I read in April that weren't part of the Owls, and I did read quite a lot. I think just because of like quarantine, and obviously we all have quite a lot more time at the moment on our hands. So let's just get started. First book I read was The Rose and the Thorn, which is the second book in the Rhaenyra Chronicles by Michael J. Sullivan. And yeah, this one was just a lot of fun. It follows Royce and Hadrian kind of like 10 years before they start in Theft of Swords. And this one we also follow kind of Arista as well, and the kind of royal family in this one, so The Rose and the Thorn. And yeah, it was just a lot of fun. I think these are the kind of prequels are kind of just, yeah, following their kind of like shenanigans. There's kind of a bit of a conspiracy going on in like the palace, and the kind of royal family are trying to be assassinated, following that kind of drama. So that was that one, and I gave that one 4 stars, so I really enjoyed it, obviously. The audiobook was great as always. Then next I read Shadowcaster, which was a reread, and that is the second book in the Shattered Realms series. So I really enjoyed this one, obviously. I love this series. I think this has always been like my least favourite book in the series. I don't know, I think because so the way the series is structured, you kind of, the first 3 books, the first like say 25% is kind of in the past, and then so the first 2 you kind of following different characters concurrently, and then the third one, the first bit's in the past, but then it kind of follows the story, and then the 4th one just follows the story. So it is a little bit confusing, and I think when I first read Shadowcaster I kind of missed like Ash and Lila and Destin. But yeah, I really enjoyed it on this reread. I think I gave it 4 stars. I'm not sure if I said that already. Alyssa's such a great character. She's like the princess. She's like a warrior princess. And then Hal's like an enemy commander. And then I just love their like dynamic. And also you follow another character called Brion, who I always really didn't like. But okay, it's kind of growing on me like every time I reread it. And obviously you're back in the Fells in this book from the like first series, which is cool. And I think because when I first read them I hadn't actually read Seven Realms, so I think that influenced my enjoyment even more. And the light end sequence of this book is really good as well, and I love you get to see a little bit of Jenna. And yeah, so it was really fun and I really enjoyed my reread. So then next is, I'm very excited to talk about this one because it's probably my favourite book that I've read in 2020 so far. Well, this or Jade City, and that is The Sword of Kaigen by M.L. Wang. So I just love this book so much. It was like, oh yeah, can't even talk about it. So we're following Misaki, who's a mother, and then her son Mamoru, and they live in this kind of like peninsula called, I think it's called like the Sword of Kaigen, or well, it's part of the Kaigenese Empire, but this like area, and they're kind of like the defense for the empire, and they've been like indoctrinated with this message, and they're all kind of like sword fighting. And there's also this really cool magic system, which is like, it's sort of like water bending on crack. And like water and ice bending basically. And yeah, that's so cool, and they can like summon these blades out of ice, which is super cool. So following them, there's a kind of, they're worried that this army is coming to invade, and then it sort of does happen. So yeah, and it's just very interesting, like all the family dynamics are so interesting, and Misaki's like journey, like she's sort of almost living in the past a little bit with like her regrets, and then she has this bit where she realizes that actually she's been like surrounded by her like sons and her kind of like sisterhood, like her sister-in-law, and also their friend as well, and it's just so moving. And yeah, and yeah, it just made me cry like a few times, which I hardly ever cry in books. But yeah, the writing's so beautiful as well. So this has quite a unique like format. I've only ever seen this in like one other book, which was the Lumatière Chronicles, where the big like climax of the book is kind of like 45 to 55% like through the book, so it's kind of in the middle. And I actually really enjoyed that because I think it lets you like the characters deal with the consequences of the climax really well. and just sort of the like how the characters interact with each other after that's happened, and like how it changes all the dynamics. And yeah, it's just really good. So I'd highly recommend that one. If you take anything away from this video, read The Sword of Kaigen. Next I read The Lady's Guide to Celestial Mechanics. So this is just like a fun romance. It's kind of a bit historical. So we're following Lucy, who she's like been working for her father as an astronomer, and then her father dies, so she kind of wants to like stand on her own and like do her own like astronomy books and stuff. And then she sort of gets taken in by this countess, Catherine, and as like a sponsor or mentor, and then it just kind of follows them and they sort of fall in love. That's kind of, but yeah. And also I really like in this story the kind of exploration of like women in science and how men sort of often take the credit for themselves, or they just sort of like use the women to like do all the things that they don't have time for. Or yeah, it was just really good. It's quite like feminist, so I would highly recommend that one, and I gave that one 3.75 stars. So then next I read the entire, well not the entire because I'd already read the first one, but the last 5 books in the Kingfountain series. So these are quite quick to get through, like they're probably about 8 or 9 hour audiobooks. I really enjoyed them. So they are The Thief's Daughter, The King's Traitor, The Hollow Crown, The Silent Shield, and The Forsaken Throne. And also, so the first 3 books kind of follow Owen, and then the last 3 books follow Trinioe, who is Owen's daughter. And yeah, I thought the last 3 books in the series had such a glow up. Like I enjoyed them so much more. I don't know why, but like yeah, so The Thief's Daughter and The King's Traitor I both gave 3.75 stars. And I enjoyed them, like, so like The Thief's Daughter, so the first one, The Queen's Poisoner, you're kind of following Owen and his friend Evie as children, and then in The Thief's Daughter they're teenagers now. So there's quite a bit of angst, which is good. And yeah, and I kind of was more invested in the world and the politics in this one, so yeah, I gave that one 3.75 stars. And then The King's Traitor I also gave 3.75 stars, and I thought that one was really good. And I really loved Owen and his sort of relationship with Cinia. I just thought that was so good. And yeah, just I really loved the storyline in that one as well. And him kind of standing up for himself and going like against the king. And yeah. And then yeah, the second half I really like loved all the new characters and stuff. So The Hollow Ground I gave 4.5 stars. So yeah, I love Trin, and she's just such a great character. Obviously Fallon as well, he's a great yeah, I was quite invested in Trin and Fallon's like relationship. And also this character called Morwenna she's kind of a bit evil, but I still liked her. And we're just kind of following some of the like consequences of the politics from earlier on the past series, because obviously there's a bit of a time skip. And yeah, and I just think it's so great, and the magic like really gets expanded in the like second half of the series. And the last book as well, The Forsaken Throne, has one of like my favourite tropes, which is when there's like a massive flood of water coming and then someone like stops it with their powers. So like it happens in Frozen 2, and it happens in Kingdom of Ash, and it happens in like Keeper of the Lost Cities Never Seen. I just love that kind of thing. It's just like the cinematics of it is just so cool. And yeah, and I was really happy with how the series ended. It was just so cute. Yeah, like the like kind of last few lines was just quite emotional. But yeah, it's just a really great series to like binge read. Yeah, so I really enjoyed it. Next I read Broken Stars, which is an anthology of Chinese science fiction short stories. And that is translated by Ken Liu, edited and translated by Ken Liu. So I really enjoyed this one. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. I just thought, there was such like a good mix of short stories, and it dealt with some like really important topics, and kind of environmentalism and like sexuality and sort of technology, like where's technology going. And there's also this really interesting story as well, which is like diseases of the future, which was so cool. Like yeah, that was fascinating. And yeah, it's quite speculative. So yeah, I would highly recommend this series, and also the cover's very pretty as well. So that was that one. Well, it's not a series, it's a book. Whatever. Next I read listened to the audiobook for Leviathan Wakes, which is the first book in the Expanse series, and I gave that one 4.75 stars. So I really loved this one. I was a bit worried that I wouldn't, because I really loved the TV show for the Expanse, but for some reason I'm really bad at like reading books if I've watched the TV show. I don't know why, and I was kind of worried I wouldn't love it as much, but I really enjoyed it. And yeah, it's kind of following the crew of the Rocinante, and they get like embroiled in a bit of a conspiracy with this thing called the protomolecule, which is like kind of an alien molecule that no one really knows anything about. And yeah, it's just so good. It's like seeing the characters again, because obviously you know them from the TV show, but like they're almost new in this setting. And also I think the timelines, like they might have changed a few things around from the TV show, because I'm sure some of the things that happened in the book happened in season 2. But anyway, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was so good, and just yeah, like the dynamic of the like group on the Western Ontario is so fun, and it's just like such a like sci-fi classic. I don't know, I was really in the mood for sci-fi. So I really enjoyed this one. I can't wait to read the rest of the books in the series. The audiobook was really good as well, actually. I enjoyed that. Then next I read the 2 Shah books, so Shah and the End of Time and Shah and the Song of Death. So these are 2 middle grade books by Roshani Chokshi, and they're part of the Rick Riordan Presents series, which I've read also Dragon Pill, which I really enjoyed. And yeah, these were so much fun. I think if you like Rick Riordan books, you definitely love these. Yeah, so we're following Aru, who in the first book she sort of lets this like demon entity out of this cursed lamp, so he's called the Sleeper, and he sort of like freezes everyone, and so they're trying to like race to like do this quest mission thing before the whole world gets like frozen in time. So yeah, so it was really fun, and Aru was such a great character as well. And her like, so they have these things called like Pandavas, which are basically demigods. I think they're like descendants of the 5 Pandava brothers from Hindu mythology, and I loved like learning more about kind of Indian like mythology in these books. They're so interesting because I didn't really know much about that. And yeah, so Aru and her friend Binny just had such a great like friendship, and it was very supportive. And then there's this like talking pigeon. Well, I think he's actually like a god, but he's in a pigeon form called Boo, and he was so funny. He's like a cross between Zazu from The Lion King and Wendell from the Stormlight Archive, which is just so funny. So I really liked him. And then in the second book we're following a couple of extra characters as well. I did like such a great dynamic to their group, and yeah, and in this one is just so like squad goals. So yeah, these are just really fun like middle grade adventures, and I'd highly recommend them. So I gave them both 4 stars. Then next I read The Empire of Dreams, which is very exciting. This is the spin-off of the Girl of Fire and Thorns trilogy. And this one we're following Red, who was a character in those books. Well, she was a character in the last book, but she was quite young in that series. So in this one, she's kind of like, I think she's 16 now. And she's sort of, because of the like political happenings, she sort of infiltrates the Royal Guard. Well, doesn't infiltrate, she like joins the Royal Guard. And while she's there, she's trying to suss out like if there's any traitors or anything, because I think they're worried that there's like an assassination plot for their prince. So yeah, and I just really loved her like dynamic with the other like guard trainees, and also her relationship with Rosario, who's the prince. They're just so cute. There's like so they're like basically brother and sister, and they each call each other. So like Red calls Rosario little brother, and then Rosario calls Red little sister. That's just so sweet. And yeah, and also this new character Ivan, I loved his like relationship with Red as well, like reluctant friends, and yeah, that was quite sweet. And this one really reminded me of Mulan as well. Just kind of all the like training sequences. And the way, and I just loved how like Red kind of like shared her knowledge with everyone, and just the way they all kind of like come together. It's a bit like Bridge 4 to like support each other, and they like become this little squad of their own, and yeah, it's just so good. So I really enjoyed that one. So then next I listened to the audiobook for Shorefall, which is the sequel to Foundryside by Robert Jackson Bennett. So I really enjoyed this one. I gave it 4 stars, although maybe 4.5, I haven't quite decided. So I didn't love it quite as much as Foundryside, I think because I was missing Clef, who's like the talking key, but the ending was so good. Like, it was like, just blew me away. And yeah, I'm quite anticipating the 3rd book because it did end on a bit of a cliffhanger. But I really love all the characters like Sanshia and Berenice. I just love them both. And their relationship, it was really nice to just see kind of like a supportive relationship, but like in a fantasy setting. Yeah, just this like little group getting up to like their shenanigans. And I really loved also in this book, he's just like such a grumpy but like kind of like sweetheart as well. Yeah, just like reluctantly helping them all, and yeah, I loved him. And then we do find a bit more about the kind of Hierophants, and they kind of have this like the big bad Hierophant is like chasing them down. So yeah, so that was interesting. And I really love the magic system in this series as well, the kind of scribing. So it's quite like technological almost, so it's quite good. And I think the book did a really good job of like discussing how it doesn't really matter what like weapons or technology humanity has, they'll always find a way to like use that for however they want to, like either for good or for evil. So it's not like the technology's fault, it's kind of the humanity's like responsibility basically. So I thought that was really interesting. And then next I read A Curse So Dark and Lonely and A Heart So Fierce and Broken. So these are like a pinnacle of like YA fantasy, which I really enjoyed them actually. Like I think you have to know what you're getting, like you're not getting a like mind-blowing groundbreaking fantasy series. It's just kind of a bit of fun. So yeah, so the first one, A Curse So Dark and Lonely, follow Harper, who gets like taken away into this like land. So she lives in DC, like Washington DC, and she gets taken away into this land called Emberfall, where she's like kidnapped by this prince basically. And it's a Beauty and the Beast retelling, so it kind of follows that storyline. But I just really loved it. Harper was like so feisty, and it was great, the representation as well. She had cerebral palsy, which was really interesting to see that like represented in a book, and how Harper didn't let it stop her. She still kind of kicked ass. And yeah, she was really sweet and caring as well. And also in the first book, quite a lot of it takes place in like an inn setting, which I really loved. I loved sort of like inn tavern settings. So yeah, so I really enjoyed that one. And also there's this character called Noah, who's like, he's a bit of a side character, but he's like a doctor in the like our world. And then when he gets taken into the world at the end, he sort of like takes over this his like the kitchens or whatever, and turns it into a hospital, and is like bossing everyone around and just being like a like an ED doctor in this like fantasy setting. And it's just so funny. I just love that as a medical student. But yeah, so I really enjoyed that bit as well. And yeah, the characters were quite endearing as well. So yeah, I really enjoyed it. So I gave the first one 4.5 stars, and then this one, A Heart So Fierce and Broken, I gave 4 stars. And I really, actually, I don't know, I might bump it up or bump the other one down, because I really enjoyed this one as well. I really liked the new character, Leah Maria. I thought she was such a good character. And I liked following Greymore as well. He's like the guard commander. He was in the first book, but you were following him as like a main character in this one. And yeah, and she was just, Leah Maria was just so kind of strong and like compassionate, and just her struggles with like, she never felt good enough. Yeah, I just really liked her, and how she can kind of see both sides. So there's like a conflict going on between two of the countries in this like fantasy world, and she's obviously on the opposing side, like Harper and Ren from the first book. But just her perspective was so interesting, because I think you often don't see it in like YA fantasy, where it's quite exploring the like complex politics and how everything isn't always like black and white in a war. So I thought this book did that really well. So kind of seeing, while one side might see the other completely as the enemy, the other side, while they do have some bad things going on, they also have some good things going on as well. And maybe it wouldn't like be all bad if they had a bit more power or whatever. So yeah, so I thought that was really interesting, and I liked how this book explored that. I'm getting near the end now. So then I read Theonite Planet Adyn, which was really fun. So this is like a kind of, it's not quite a spin-off, but it's set in like sort of the same world as the Sword of Kaigen. It's by the same author, M.L. Wang. And it follows like quite different characters. But so in Sword of Kaigen, there's this character in Masaki's past called Robin, and then this follow his son Daniel. And this book is very different from the Sword of Kaigen, but I really enjoyed it. It's like, it reads almost as middle grade, which I don't mean that like in a derogatory way at all. So like themes it follows and the age of the characters. So we follow Joan and Daniel, and they're both 13, and just the kind of like the friendship and like the exploration of belonging. And yeah, it was just really good. Like the friendship was so sweet, and like how supportive they were of each other. And it's a bit of a superhero book as well. And Joan just has a very complicated relationship with her family, because she has these powers, but like no one else on earth has these powers. And so she's kind of hiding them, and she's been hiding them her whole life. And her family are quite like conservative. They just don't want any of this, like they're very like non-confrontational. So she's kind of become quite lonely and like repressed almost. And then so Daniel and his dad like move into their neighborhood, and then they have these powers as well. So it's like exploring that, which is really cool. So yeah, I really enjoyed this one, and I'm quite excited to read the second one. And then the last book on this list is, so I listened to the audiobook for The Alchemists of Loom by Elise Kober, and I enjoyed this one so much more than I was expecting to, so I gave it 3.75 stars, and it's kind of like this steampunky world. There's like these things called dragons, and at first I was really confused because I thought they were like proper dragons but I think they're actually like sort of like human shaped, basically, kind of like elves or fae or whatever. And there's also these like fen who are like humans. Dragons are like in charge, but these alchemists are like, there's this group of alchemists that are rumoured to be rebelling, and the main character Ari, one day she finds this dragon and she like tricks him into giving her a boon. The dragon says he'll give her a boon if she takes him to these like rebel alchemists, because I think the dragon's like a rebel or something. So she and him go on this little quest to get to the alchemists. And I just really love the like steampunkiness, and also there's Ari and then the dragon whose name I can't pronounce and also that Ari's little like mentee Florence, and she was so cute. I loved her so much. She reminded me a lot of Berenice from Shorefall and Foundryside. I really loved her, and just their like group dynamic is just so great. It's like a found family dynamic, kind of like the grumpy dragon and the like crazy inventor, and then this like sweetheart, but she also like gun wielding and I really love the like mentor teacher relationship between Ari and Florence. I thought that was really great, and also like quite a strong like female friendship, and I would say that was almost the main focus of the story, more so than any like romantic relationship. So that was really great to see. Just the plot was quite like fast moving, and it's just really enjoyable because I like found myself caring for the characters quite a lot. So I really enjoyed that one. And that is everything. So I hope you enjoyed the video. So please give it a like if you did, and consider subscribing if you haven't already, and do leave a comment if you read any of these books or if you're interested in any, because I would love to chat about them. And I hope you're all having a good day, and I will see you next time.